has launched other types of alternative responses to meet the need and the answer to the community of today. The other big one that you're going to hear about is staffing, recruitment, and employee wellness. That has been our most important, but also most challenging tenet of what we are dealing with in today's public safety world. And so those are some of the things that we're going to be addressing in our budget methodology. So let's go ahead and jump into the numbers. So this is our agency-wide general fund expenditure and FDA changes. What you'll see is a slight increase. It's in 2021, $1 million due to the National Crime and Information Act or system that we have to utilize, as well as a 2022 increase of $2.7 million for the SET team, which we'll talk about, as well as safety HR positions. Human resource positions, and then the restoration of ARPA funds, which is in total $864,000. We're also asking for $770,000 for Toothly Hall, which the wonderful Greg Morrow will explain later on in today's presentation, as well as $240,000 for the 911 Academy. We have an increase in 2020, as you see here, for FTEs due to the PID department coming over officially to the EDOS, to the Executive Director's Office, from the Sheriff's Office. And then in 2021, you see the increase due to ARPA restorations, as well as the increase for SET, diversion, HR, and ARPA restorations for all FTE. So this is our revenue change. The revenue change that you see here in 2019 was due to ComCore, and it stopped assessing and collecting the data for pretrial population, and it's still collecting the post-conviction population. But we have a $900,000 transfer as well to the 901 trust fund, and so those are the two revenue changes that you see. Let's talk about our equity plan and the equity work that we do. And so, in everything that we do in the city and county of Denver, Mayor Hancock has made it very clear that we must have an equity lens. And in the Department of Public Safety, this is something that we do consistently. And we wanted to make sure that we are looking at things not just how they've always been, but always how they can be, even if they haven't been tried before. And so you'll see, based on decisions that have been made by you council, we are dealing with implementing Toothly Hall, and really taking that as an opportunity to provide gender responsive and trauma informed solutions. We also are really proud to implement the assessment intake diversion center that'll provide diversion from and other services to individuals who would otherwise be in the criminal justice system, as well as the street enforcement team, which is an alternative response to ordinances across the city that we are seeing challenges with every day in the street. We also provide recruitment resources to improve the workforce diversity. This is a big one, because as we have a record number of people we want to hire, we want to make sure that there's a tenet of making sure that our community looks like, or our workforce looks like our community. We also proactively want to enhance the policy and oversight of the criminal justice reform and equitable practices in the Department of Public Safety. So I went over the expansions just a few minutes ago, but one thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was our services and supplies, because I know that is a question every year. And so in our services and supplies, you'll see $519,000 for Toothly Hall, for the Toothly Hall contract here in Great Memorial here soon. We also have $175,000 for wellness services, $30,000 for QSERA, and $89,000. Goodbye. Here's at and salary considerations. these are our year-over-year general fund budget allocations. As you see, there's an agency-wide increase of $864,000 that we're talking about, which really is detailed in 2021 and 2022 for ARPA funds. We also have a safety management 2020 increase addition for PIT, and that's just a reflection of PIT coming over and being officially established in the EDOS office. We have in 2021 a decrease for unbudgeted positions of $631,000 due to what we all saw last year. And of course, in 2022, the $2.7 million for the SET team, which includes the two teams which are here about, as well as safety HR expansion and the $175,000 restoration. We are looking for 2 FTEs to be converted to unlimited for Tuley Hall, which is included in that $769,000, as well as the 911 Emergency Communications 2020 reductions related to staff moving to the trust fund, which Andrew Dameron will talk to you about here shortly. Also, in safety management, which is a separate fund here, you'll also see that there's a 2020 FTE increase due to PID again, as well as a 2021 FTE decrease due to the incentive program that we implemented citywide. In the safety programs, you won't see any changes reflected. However, in the 911 emergency communications, as talked about before, you will see a decrease due to the absorption of the trust fund of 80 FTE charged to the trust fund in total. And we will give you more information for the public to remember what the trust fund actually is. The 911 and Andrew presents that here shortly. So let's talk about safety management. So safety management and that fund is including my administration, and it's the oversight of all of the public safety departments. It includes the SET team, it includes the transportation policy team, and it includes all the things, all the cogs in the wheel that have to do with discipline, all the cogs of safety that really sets to administer the Department of Public Safety. It's important to know this because the Department of Public Safety, the EDOS office itself, has a major task. We have almost close to half of the employees of the city and county of Denver that answer to the Department of Public Safety. And with that, there takes a lot of personnel, it takes a lot of administration to make sure that we are not only holding accountable, but we are also implementing best practices across the board. And so that is the job of the safety administration. The PIT division, started by my predecessor, Troy Riggs, is the complaint and misconduct office that oversees the sheriff's department that really deals with all the discipline. And so that has been an official piece starting in 2020 of the EDOS office, as well as human resources. Our human resource staff is some of the best human resource staff I've ever worked with, because they do such a plethora of jobs. And so the Department of Human Resources, unknown to many, is just serving the Department of Public Safety due to the volume of people that we have. And so we actually are outside of OHR. And so in the safety management equity framework, as stated before, especially when dealing with staff, we want to make sure that we're focusing on having a diverse workforce. And when we have that diverse workforce, we want to make sure that we continue to make sure it's a place that people want to stay. And that is something that we are working hard on and diligently on with the Office of Human Resources, but also with all the chiefs and sheriff, to make sure that retention is just as much of a focus as recruiting. We also are expanding our alternative response strategies. The SET team is a good example of that. The early intervention team is a good example of that. The STAR team is a good example of that. And safety management has really overseen and helped cultivate all of those programs in partnership with our agencies such as the Denver Police Department and Sheriff's Department, as well as the Fire Department. And so the entire reason we do some of those alternative responses is because we believe that you need to have an increase in community engagement. We believe that we need to listen to the community. We need to really foster that open ear and have the ability to answer the calls for service while making sure we're not putting folks in harm's way. And so we have really felt that we have answered that call, especially through this budget of doing this. This council, I just wanted to mention, hits on two of your budget priorities, budget priority number 3 and number 4. So I'm actually going to stop talking so much and have Carla come up. And this is her first time, I believe, coming to a council presentation. She is our Human Resources Director. And so, Carla, I would like you to go over our human resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Robinson. While we switch speakers, I want to welcome Council Members Kanice Sandoval and Herndon to the table, as well as Evan Dreyer and Alan Salazar from the Mayor's Office.
Good morning. As you can see on the attached PowerPoint, we have requested 2 on-call background investigators to support us with sheriff's recruiting and talent acquisition. And that will help to speed up the process of acquiring top talent for that organization, as well as for some of our other civilian positions. So we're excited about that. We've requested an HR talent acquisition coordinator. This is a critical role for the talent acquisition department because it allows our professional recruiters to step up and take on more of that higher level work of sourcing candidates to attract higher level talent to the Department of Safety. These positions will help with scheduling interviews and looking at minimum qualifications for positions. As far as the HR technician 2, that position will support our HR business partners so they can focus on the higher level work around retention that is so critical to our department. They will handle more of the data requests and lower level administrative work that is taking up the time of our HR business partners. Ecusera is a tool that we are currently utilizing, and there's a cost for that, moving that over from OHR.
I'd also like to now bring up our wonderful Assistant Director, Armando Soldate. I could easily go over this data, but he has worked so hard to implement not only the EIT team, the SET team, but also help us with a myriad of challenge in the Department of Public Safety. So I'm going to ask Armando to go over the encampment data as well as the SET team and what we hope to accomplish.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Director. What this map represents is when we started the early intervention team in October of 2020, we equipped all those staff members with, on their iPhones, there was a GIS coordinate collecting application. So every encampment that we visited, which is represented by the black dots on the map, was what we tracked. We also tracked some properties about those encampments. We tracked whether there was improperly discarded trash, right-of-way encumbrances, hypodermic needle, feces or excrement, and rodent infestation. What we noticed quickly was as camps grew larger, we typically saw some of these or not all of these or most of these represented at the encampments. So what the early intervention team sought out to do was to be an alternate response, go out and try to connect people with resources and alternates to shelter. But what we saw is that outreach wasn't enough. We started, and I know I've had the opportunity to brief on most of you, and you all are experiencing a high number of calls about encampments to your offices. But we also saw that across the city and across our responses as well. So what we see at the bottom here is we see the call volume in March of 2021. We tried to put our arms around the calls that were coming in to separate places throughout the city, non-emergency police, 911, your offices, the mayor's office, safety, and we tried to funnel them through 311. What we saw was an average of before we were going into that, we looked at the data and it looked at about 30 calls a day. But as we got into the 311 handling the calls, and as we publicized that just sharply increased. It was a volume of calls that increased and continued to increase through the summer. And as you can see, our high in June was up to about almost 3,600 calls. On the 911 encampment calls, I also show that because what we were hoping to do is get rid of those non-emergency police calls, or that resources that were being devoted to calls on the 911 side of the house. And that really didn't, while the number of calls went down, as you can see, they've spiked up. One thing that's important, and I've shared with you all, is the tone of these calls. Folks are very frustrated. They're very frustrated with our encampment response, that it takes very long to get them resolved. Outreach can take some time, and it's been an increasing call for enforcement. Enforcement is a call we get, and I see many of these calls. I listen to many of these calls, and I talk to many of these complainants. What we're seeing is a real turn, and people are calling for enforcement of the urban camping ordinance. They're calling for more stricter enforcement and a quicker resolution to some of these camps. We in safety are being responsive to that, but we're also trying to be responsive to the concerns that we hear about introducing armed law enforcement response, or always having an armed law enforcement response. We learned from STAR, some of those other alternative responses, co-responders, that we don't always need an armed police officer to respond to something to resolve it. Sometimes it could be the best resource. If you send the best resource, it doesn't necessarily have to be the police, who become everything for everybody in this day and age. So what we did is we tried to develop a program that is mirrored after our other civilian law enforcement or civilian enforcement models, right-of-way enforcement, those that write parking tickets, our park ranger model, those that, they police our parks, but, unarmed as well. So we based that off of, we are in development of that, and I had the opportunity to present to Safe House and talk to you all about that. We're in development of that team, which is 6 people. It's a supervisor, a lead, and 4 members. I've heard directly from some of you, is that enough? Is that going to be enough to make a dent in some of these complaints? And I frankly told you, no, it's not. We hope that this expansion of up to 12, which will double the size of that team that we're developing now, and that will be operational in mid-October, will help really alleviate those concerns and get to these encampments, enforce the urban camping ordinance when we can, hopefully through compliance. Before they develop into these large encampments that you all know about, what it takes to clean those up. So that's what we're hoping to develop. Most of this is driven by salaries of our staff. We're hiring really good qualified staff for this team, and we're looking forward to that. The other thing that this team will allow us to do is another question that I've heard from you all is, what are the hours, right? Are they going to do this standard 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Well, this is going to allow us to really have those teams have some lead into the weekends, working that. The problem doesn't stop of these encampments doesn't stop at 5 p.m. on Friday. So we're going to hopefully have this be able to deploy staff onto the weekends. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Saldate. The next area I want to discuss with you all today is the $175,000 permanent expenditure, which is an increase to our wellness services. One thing that we've seen in this last year or two has been a dramatic increase in the need for wellness services for our staff. As you can imagine, before 2020, the Department of Public Safety had some of the most at-risk, most tough positions within it. That only was exacerbated in 2020 and again here in 2021. And we have seen, which is a very good thing, by the way, a high utilization of our wellness resources. It is important that we provide our police officers, our firefighters, our deputy sheriffs wellness resources, especially those of psychology or psychologists and areas in that help with mental health. And so this is a increase of our 175,000 to help with the wellness services. Just to give you a quick overview, We had over 10,000 visits last year for our psychologist for the Department of Safety. The next one is something I'm very proud of that definitely was started before my tenure, but I want to continue, which is the physical therapy program. As you all know, you probably hear from Brendan Hanlon, welcome Brendan, many times about how we deal with workers' comp claims. And I'm proud to say the Department of Public Safety has found a way to mitigate a lot of workers' comp claims. And that is by having internal physical therapists. What they do is remarkable. If we have a firefighter, police officer, sheriff, deputy, or frankly any Department of Public Safety employee who is injured on the job or has something that's tweaked that would take them out of service, they go see our internal physical therapist. And that physical therapist helps them internally, sets a plan for them, and gets them back on the street post-haste. What you'll find is that this internal physical therapist, if you look at the workers' comp claims, usually, if you use an external, costs $3,125 at the median. When they're in internal, when we handle it internally, it's $1,664. Almost half of the cost is saved. And so this is a very large cost savings. And I'm just proud of this program because the other thing that this helps with our folks is morale. When they can go to a person that they can trust and see and be taken care of, they're able to actually get back on the street and be able to take care of their ailments post-haste. I also want to talk about the Diversion Center. This is something else that I'm extremely proud of. This is an effort to try and mitigate people with mental health issues from going into the criminal justice system. Now, of course, you can't catch everybody, but I think this is an effort to really try and focus on how do we divert folks from being included in the mental health or with mental health issues from going into the criminal justice system and really providing services, really allowing for them to get the help that they need, but also answering for the safety issues that we have. And so I have to give Mayor Hancock a lot of credit for this because he's been talking about this program for a few years now. And with the partnership with Mayor Hancock and the police department, we are excited to try and launch this program. This $131,000 is a 1.5 FTE to staff this center. Excellent. So now we are going to talk about the contract compliance coordinator. This is something that has been asked for multiple years, but this is something to help us, a contract compliance coordinator that will help us really manage the Denver Health contracts and make sure we're in compliance with all audit services and all the above. And so we are looking forward to getting this because it'll just make sure that we're doing what we need to do on the financial side with Denver Health. I'm going to bring up our 911 director, Andrew Dameron, to go over 911 stats. Thank you.
Good morning. It's my first opportunity as well to present in front of all of you, so thank you. 911, of course, includes our call intake operations, so our emergency communications technicians, or ECTs. The law enforcement dispatch team, and then the administration, as well as the NCIC team that was moved over to 911 last year from a combination of the sheriff's department and the police department. There are, of course, as you may or may not be aware, we do have the fire dispatch team and the EMS dispatch team at Denver 911 as well. Fire are Denver Fire employees, and the EMS team are Denver Health employees. Our call volume has continued to rise. We've seen the highest call volume this year that we have in 5 years. So a lot of our focus is on meeting the people of Denver where they are, and that is with additional need for 911 services. The budget equity framework, the EDI work that the EDI team at Denver 911 has been doing has been exemplary. I've been incredibly proud of the stuff that they've been doing. I know I've seen some of your council aides attending some of our recorded video sessions that we're doing on a monthly basis. We've received a lot of really good feedback. The team's done some fantastic work, and that is continuing as part of an iterative process. Matter of fact, today we're making an additional change. The public safety non-emergency line. You get the options for the IVR in English and then in Spanish. But the problem is at the beginning, there's a lot of options. And so we're changing it so that at the beginning, you actually get a recording in Spanish that says everything will be repeated in Spanish, just hold on the line, just to make sure we're not losing anybody who just goes, well, this is just a long explanation in English. And then the main budget item is the ECT academies, ECT and dispatch academies that we have planned for 2022. The eagle-eyed among you will see that the line continues to go down. This is simply just a representation of what is being covered by the general fund. Murphy mentioned the trust fund. To kind of reiterate what that is, every phone line, whether it's a mobile device or a hard line, you pay a 911 fee on your monthly bill. For the city and county of Denver, it's $1.20 every month. If you have a prepaid phone, last year they changed that from a percentage fee to a one-time fee or a per transaction fee of $1.38. So that money comes in to the city, and that's where some of that the additional funding that 911 is able to leverage comes from.
Thank you, Andrew. So now we're going to move the safety programs and spend a little bit of time here. And safety programs are all those agencies that really serve other purposes other than responding to calls in the Department of Public Safety. We have the Office of Community Violence Solutions, which is formerly GRID. We have the pretrial and electronic monitoring. We have youth safety programs, and we have the Cadet program. All of these agencies, I have to say, we have tremendous leadership in, and really looking forward to the continuation of the success of these programs. I want to bring up, actually, before I bring them up, I'll talk about our equity framework here. These programs, many of these programs are there to deal with the historically vulnerable communities that we have. We also want to advance crime reduction within the city, and that's done through alternative response and some of the areas like youth programs and the programs that the Office of Community Violence Solutions puts into our community. We also want to reduce recidivism through the community through collaboration, as well as address the barriers that contribute to mass incarceration. And so, again, Council, this hits the budget priorities 1, 3, and 4 for you. And so I'd like to bring up our wonderful director, Greg Morrow, who will detail the areas about Thule Hall for you. Thank you, Greg.
I did notice that Greg stood up when you said wonderful director before saying his name, so welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Director. The first slide here outlines a target metric of right-sizing our pretrial staff. Pretrial operations consists of 2 distinct teams. The first team is located in the downtown detention center. It operates 24/7, and its responsibility is to interview individuals who have been arrested in order to conduct a risk assessment and produce a bond report that is used by the court at first advisement. This team, the supervision team, is individuals who are released pretrial, have a requirement of different types of supervision. And we have been trying to reach a target of a ratio of cases to each individual pretrial officer of 1 to 125 for several years now. So this metric shows that we have finally hit within that range, and it's, which should lead to a right-sized staff and produce better outcomes. The second slide, I think, is sandwiched in between pretrial in Thule Hall, and it's about youth program successful completion and recidivism rates. I think if there are questions, I would defer to Pat Hendrick on that. Otherwise, I can move to Thule Hall. We're almost there, Council. This has been a long road for the last 2 years, but this is the second building block in the vision to have a new community corrections model, one that we and the citizens of Denver can be proud of. This particular effort is going to bring back in-county programming for women. Since 2019, when the GEO contract was terminated, we have been without a majority of services for women who are both returning to Denver or being sentenced to community corrections from the court. So this touches back on an equity issue of bringing back services for that population. The general fund offset, which is the difference between the forecasted state revenues and the operational cost, is almost $750,000. You might remember back to the council floor when we talked about that in 2019, that if we were going to run community corrections as a public hybrid, which is this proposal, or straight as a public model, it would come at an expense. It would take additional resources to do that. So the delta we're looking at in this first year is $769,000. We are excited about the hybrid. I'll be bringing forward a proposed contract with a well-respected and known community entity to help run Thule Hall. So the model is going to involve both city staff, and the proposal is to contract with the empowerment program, which will come alongside the city and have FTE to provide care management services. So the beautiful thing about this is you take the benefits of a city structure along with a community partner to provide equitable services and great outcomes. One thing that I would mention in terms of why we're seeing a difference in the general fund offset is there's also been a policy decision made. In community corrections, providers are allowed to charge clients rent or subsistence, as it's referred to, which for years has been debated as a barrier to reentry. So a policy decision was made to not charge the client that rent, which will allow them to stabilize and have a healthy savings account as they leave residential placement and move on into reentry. So that's part of the offset.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for your leadership. That brings us to questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Director, along with your team for the presentation. I welcome Council members Ortega and Sadabaka to the table, and did want to acknowledge our finance team who do the heavy lifting building this budget, our Director of Budget Management, Stephanie Carianis-Adams, and Brendan Hanlon, our CFO. With that, we'll start with Councilmember Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I was looking at the safety management section, and I'm wondering, it looks like a $22 million growth, right? But you can't really compare to last year. So if we compare to the year before, it's even still 17 million. Mm-hmm. Why that huge shift? I mean, that's a huge shift.
I'm actually going to bring up our Deputy Director, Laura, to detail that shift for you. While she's coming up, I also want to acknowledge my Finance Director, the wonderful Shanae Cummings, who has worked tirelessly on this budget. So thank you, Shanae. Laura?
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. Can you highlight where you saw the special management, safety management increase of 22 million?
I'm looking, it is slide, hold on. 9. Wait. It's not slide 9. I lied. It's slide 10. There we go. So the left-hand side, safety management, right?
That is FTE. That's budgeted
right,
FTE.
Yeah, exactly. So what are the, what is the difference in that 17 million? I mean, are we staffing up so much that we have $17 million worth of costs? I don't.
Sorry, I'm trying to just get a reference of where you're finding the 17 million.
It's not dollars, it's number of
It's,
FTEs.
oh, it's number of FTE, not dollars. Phew, okay, I was like, what on earth? Okay, perfect, thank you for clarifying. Okay, I was like, wait a minute, that's crazy.
And so the 67 up to the 89.
Got it,
That
it's
includes
staff members.
That is FTE.
Not
because-
dollars.
Exactly, for the
Costing us.
set team, the diversion center, and also our increase of HR positions.
Got it, okay, cool, thank you. So then next question about, I guess, there's in the budget book, there's on page, hold on. 627, there's a note about an increase in 2 FTEs in on-call investigators to support in recruitment. Why do we need
Those
2
are for our-
investigators to
Yep,
support?
and so those are on-call investigators for our background investigators to review and do background investigations for our deputy sheriff in our sheriff's department.
Okay, how,
Yep.
yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to expand on that a little bit. So with the increase of needing to hire so many people, what we have found is that support services that actually hire the people and bring those people on, we need to bolster. It's that kind of day. We need to boost that. And so, whether it's background investigators, whether it's HR employees, we need to be able to make sure we're not overtaxing the people that we have currently. We don't have enough staff in the HR department and or the background investigations folks. And those positions are so crucial. They're so crucial to hiring the right kind of person for our public safety agency. So that's why you see the background investigator in there.
Got it, okay, thank you.
I just want to take a time check. We've got 17 minutes left. I've got 5 people in the queue.
So last question is really around the jail population, the diversion center, the cost savings that come from that versus the effect on the community. So what we are seeing is a significant uptick in crime, right? That is really upsetting our community members for obvious reasons. And part of what they're being told by everyone on the street is that they're getting, that the crimes are getting, as long as they're low-level crimes, people are being released on PR bonds, and then they're just committing more crimes while they're out on those PR bonds. Is that something that the diversion center can do something about? Or is that a state and judicial system issue?
It's a yes and.
Okay.
The diversion center is not a replacement for the criminal justice system. And so I want to make that very clear. We will continue to enforce the law. We will continue to arrest and do the things we need to do to keep our community safe. However, what it is the ability for us to divert people with mental health issues to something alternatively than jail. What we find is that there is a plethora of people, whether they're unhoused or just having mental health crises, that end up in the criminal justice system because that is the only answer that we've had in America, frankly, for a long time. And what this diversion center is an avenue in which we can divert resources to help these people in their mental health crisis without having the continual behavior of reoffending and really ending up in our jails over and over and over again. And so this is not a quote unquote silver bullet. It's not the only answer. This is one step in the process of trying to try something that will allow for us to help us move the needle in the mental health issues in the city and county of Denver, but also making sure that we are not incarcerating people who could have a chance to be successful by getting help in another way.
Got it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Ortega, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Murphy, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. The first one is What is the status of Cadet? Are we ever going to do anything with the building across the street? Is it still sit completely vacant? Is it being used for anything at all?
Yes, it is. So this is a question, Councilwoman, that I ask at least, weekly, Laura? PADF is being used right now for evidence. It's being used for storage, which is much needed, by the way. But I know that I've been meeting with the Dottie. Say that again?
It's expensive storage.
It is expensive storage, but I've been meeting with Dottie and my executive team to come up with a solution for PADF and possibly utilize that again through our bond dollars for something that can be more community focused. Whether it's a department, a police department, whatever it is, know that we are trying to move the needle on that now. It is complex. As you know, any things that do with any type of buildings and the restoration of those buildings are complex. So I hope to come to you soon with more answers for that.
And if I might interject, Mr. Director, for those who might not understand in our viewing audience, PADF is.
I actually don't know what the acronym for PADF is.
It's the old downtown city jail.
It's our old jail.
It is the old jail. I didn't know what the exact PADF meant, but I've only called it PADF since I've been here the last 4 years. So thank you.
It's pre-arraignment detention facility.
The Honorable Sky Stewart. Sky is her new title is Encyclopedia as well. So thank you, Sky.
So I have a couple more. On Tilly Hall, you mentioned the $769,000. In the budget book, it also has the $1,152,500, and that is for personnel. So I'm assuming that's city personnel, and I'm just curious, what will they be doing different from what the contractor will do?
Thanks for the question, Councilwoman. So the hybrid model will have city staff running facility operations and those services that are more related to security, pat searches, checking people in and out of the facility when they're out in the community, and just facility operations. There'll also be milieu managers to come alongside the contractor who will run more traditional case management or care management.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is one of my favorite programs, the Public Safety Cadet Program.
Man, I knew it was coming.
Where are we in targeting those positions for Denver kids?
We are very close. So I have given the directive to our director of the cadet program to really study this. And actually, she should be reaching out to you if she hasn't already, but to really figure out what our ability is to bring more Denver kids in, but also what it would look like for this to be a Denver kid-centric program. I know, Councilwoman, you've asked me for the last 2 years, why is this program not for Denver kids only? There's a lot of reasons that has come to play in the history of the program. However, I hear you loud and clear, and I tend to agree that we need to make sure we're using this program to help Denver kids. We're in Denver public schools, but also that we realize what this program truly does. And I think that's what we're focusing on now, which is it really helps with generational wealth in that we pay for the college education of the kids that go through this program. And why not do that for the majority of our Denver kids? And so know that I'll ask you if you have anything to say, Sherry, other than what I've said, but I really do believe that you have something there. And I want to move that direction.
So my only other question is, are we using existing cadets in the recruitment process? Because I know historically we have not been. So has that changed?
The actual cadets to do the recruitment. We have 7 members of the cadet program that are on the recruitment team, and they are actually focused on all DPS schools. They've been assigned 2 to 3 schools per cadet. Out of the 7 cadets, they're all DPS students.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of Sherry and what she's done in the short time that she's been the director. She has taken this program and really made it one for the Denver community. So Sherry, thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got 9 minutes and 3 votes. Council Pro Tem Torres.
Thank you so much. Hi, Murphy.
Hey, ma'am.
A couple staff questions that I'm seeing in the expansions. The Denver Health contract person, that's new. What's the contract that they're overseeing?
So I believe, and I'm going to ask Brennan because Brennan is the person who's brought this one to my attention. But I believe it is to monitor all of the Denver Health contracts for the Department of Public Safety, whether that's the Sheriff's Office, whether that's our contracts with EDOS and MRS. But Brennan.
Signed in safety to oversee the public safety section of the contract is one of our sections to review those invoices and provide feedback to that contract as we monitor it throughout the year.
Are you talking about the operating agreement?
The operating agreement,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, the safety sections in the operating agreement.
Do you have those separated out as to what safety does separately from anything else in that?
We could get you an overview of it that's a little bit less dense than the whole operating agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
A new community and government relations or liaison, I thought you already had that position.
Yes, I'll have Brennan.
That is a conversion. Sorry. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. That is a conversion from a mayoral appointee position that was Michael Sapp, and so we converted that into a CSA position.
Okay.
It is the current position that you're talking about, Councilwoman. But we, instead of it being a mayoral appointee, it is now the CSA position.
Has it always been a mayoral appointee?
No, we created it.
Okay.
It was a new position we created when we came in.
Okay. I'll ask questions about the set team later, I think. My last question is actually for 911. And I want to thank you for the change in the bilingual message. I think it's incredibly important. My question is around, do you measure not just call volume, but also call resolution, time to response, or time to contact, things like that?
DPD, Denver Fire, and Denver Health do maintain that. We have some of that information, but that typically resides with the responding agency.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. 7 minutes left. I've got Councilman Black and Councilman Herndon after that.
Thank you. For the sake of time, I will just make a request of Greg Morrow. If you could provide us either in a written report or come to safety, you don't have to get up. Just give us a complete update on everything that is happening and has happened since 2019, where we are, what the plan is. You know, I'm really excited about Tulley Hall, but, you know, I'm also curious, where have those women been for a few years? And I just, a complete update would be really helpful.
We'll make that happen. Thank you. Councilman Herndon, you can use 6 minutes to put your feet up.
Thank you very much. You know, I am long-winded. I'll be done in one. Director Robinson, I just want to say thank you for all that you do and your amazing team. I will piggyback what Councilman Ortega talked about with the cadet program, though I will say it gives me pause if we make it solely Denver students, because in my leadership program that I do, we go to the police academy, we learn about the cadet program, and some of those students don't live in Denver. And that's not because of their own choice. They don't have to say if they lived in Denver and they were forced to move. So I would love to see more Denver students, but I think having this program is great because these students can become ambassadors for public safety, whether they end up wearing a uniform or not. So I think that would be something that I would have pause about, but I want to continue to see this program expand because I've known students that have participated in it, and it does great work for them and their leadership ability. So I just wanted to, we had to take a pause during the pandemic, but I want to see that continue to ramp up and let's get more students. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. If you don't mind, go ahead. Take a quick one.
Just to piggyback on this, during our conversations, we did talk about looking at how many of those students had been in Denver public schools that got displaced for lots of different reasons, and looking at, you know, maybe a couple of years back so that, you know, they were still technically Denver kids, and had a commitment to work in the school system and knew a lot of the youth that might be interested. So that's part of the conversation.
I think one thing, if I can comment on that, one thing that we found with this program is knowledge is power. And a lot of times kids or their parents don't even know about the program. And so what we're trying to do is really expand that horizon and really get into the schools, understand what that can do for the family in terms of saving money, really getting a job, as well as paying for an education and the benefits of that. And I think that will solve a lot of the issues. And Sherry has been working diligently to do that.
All right, well, thank you for all the questions. I do have a couple of quick things. We had a great presentation in safety on the Explorer program the other day. And my question was, if we are now employing implicit bias training and equity training in the Cadet and Explorer programs, and apparently we're not yet, it's under discussion. And I just think that would be the ideal place to begin that training and support that effort moving forward. And the other thing I was wondering, Mr. Director, if you'd like to make a quick comment. We received the recommendations of the Citizens Task Force on Policing and Public Safety, and I know you've got an effort going forward to look at those 112 recommendations. If you can give a brief update where things are with that.
Absolutely. After the task force spent a year to put forth these recommendations to us, by the leadership of the mayor, frankly, and I have to give Mayor Hancock a lot of credit because he said, I don't just want this to be a public safety response. I want this to be a holistic city response and to really review each and every one of these recommendations with the leadership of the mayor's office and all the executive directors being a part. And so we have been doing that. We've been meeting 2 to 3 times a week about all of these recommendations. We've put together a dashboard, which will be going public soon, to talk about the various phases of which we can implement some of these recommendations. I'm happy to say that there are some that we will be able to implement and have implemented already post-haste. And then there's others that need more conversation and due diligence before we can say we're going to implement. And then those that we don't think are good for the city maybe sound good in terms of a talking point, but not okay to operationalize. Frankly, we're going to talk about that. And frankly, have had multiple conversations with the task force themselves on this. And so we are looking forward to putting out that public dashboard. We're looking forward to working with the task force to implement some of the strategies they've put in place. But moreover, I'm looking forward to some of those recommendations that they've recommended to be implemented so that we can see the fruit from them.
Thank you for that update. Mayor, any final comments? Well, we have 1 minute left. We'll do a quick change with DPD and hear from Denver Police Department. Mr. Director, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will get started in 2 minutes. It is still Tuesday, September 21st, and we are continuing with briefings to City Council on Mayor Hancock's proposed budget for 2022. My name is Paul Cashman. I represent South Denver District 6. I have the privilege of chairing our safety committee. We are going to hear next from the Denver Police Department, but before we do that, we will start with introductions and start to my right.
Thank you, Councilman. Alan Salazar, Chief of Staff for the Mayor.
Guy Stewart, Deputy Chief of Staff.
Murphy Robinson, Public Safety Director and Deputy Mayor.
Joel Clark, District 7.
Good morning, Robin Knight, at large.
Brenda Black, District 4.
Aurora Ortega, the other at-large member.
Brendan Hanlon, City Chief Financial Officer.
Andy Saravaca, District 9.
Amanda Sandoval, Northwest Denver, District 1.
Jamie Torres, District 3. Amanda Sawyer, District 5.
Chris Harnan, District 8. Evan Flynn, Southwest Denver, District 2. Evan Dreyer, Mayor's Office.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the quick changeover. I will welcome our Chief of Police, Paul Payson. The floor is yours, sir.
Councilman, thank you. Council members and Mayor, thanks for this opportunity to talk about the budget, the police department budget, and
Don't try this at home, kids.
all right. This is piggybacking exactly off of what Executive Director Murphy Robinson talked about, our priorities, our strategic plan, also City Council's budget priorities here through the lens of both the Mayor, Council, and safety's equity framework, with the goal of supporting and protecting all who call Denver home. We'll talk about this a little bit more here soon, but you all are very familiar with the 5 hotspots in Denver, as well as our collaborative policing initiative to address these locations. These locations unfortunately align with the Denver's infamous inverted L, and our goal is to help folks, particularly around not only crime prevention, but trauma. What researchers indicate is young people exposed to trauma is a not only crime prevention measure of trauma to future violence, and working in this collaborative whole of government approach not only gives us the greatest opportunity for success to address the immediate violence that we're seeing, but also to help transform these areas and reduce the negative impact, the victimization that crime seems to create a cycle for our most vulnerable positions, for most vulnerable community members. The nuts and bolts of this entire budget presentation is this slide right here. Our core objectives are about restoring both civilian and sworn positions, and then an enhancement to our crime lab related to investigations. Proudly, Denver has some of the highest clearance rates for violent crime in the country. That is important, because when we are talking about holding those that commit the most harm in our community accountable, it is through these detailed, complex investigations. And when we're talking about helping communities, helping families that have lost a loved one, you have to be able to do everything humanly possible to solve those cases for individuals that have lost a loved one. When we're talking about the overall agency expenditures, our authorized staffing has not changed. The 1596, this slide just shows that the transfer of 32 of those officers over to Den's budget. More pronounced here on the annual revenue and how that transformation takes, instead of general fund or a transfer from the DEN fund to the general fund, now that is streamlined out there at DEN for the 132 officers that provide safety services at our international airport. You heard Murphy talk about equity action plans. Very proud of our efforts to piggyback on this Department of Safety, this mayor initiative. One of the areas that Denver has led is the creation of our SLIDE Bureau. This SLIDE stands for Shared Leadership in Institutional Diversity and Equity. We are raising this to a commander level position and then fully supporting this to include recruiting. One of their primary functions right now is the ABLE program. I think you all have kind of, at least at one presentation, I know Emily Locke gave a pretty good overview of ABLE. This is an evidence-based program with years and years of study. I've said it multiple times, if every police department in the country were an ABLE police department, if every country did the ICAP principles, we certainly would prevent or mitigate many of the horrible tragedies that we've seen. And this is a way that we can help not only here in Denver, but also in the state of Colorado. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Again, we talked a little bit there with our collaborative crime prevention initiative, the 5 hotspots, really helping to support community members, reducing violent crime in these areas, so that way we can have healthy and vibrant communities moving forward. Our lead program, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. This is very akin to what Murphy was talking about a little bit there with the AID Center, Assessment Intake Diversion Center. Our focus when we're talking about this equity lens, Murphy put it very well, is if we can get somebody the help and the support that they need before they ever step foot in the city jail or into the criminal justice system, and they get that support, then we are helping our community and helping the individual that is in need. So LEAD does that primarily around narcotics and human trafficking or the sex worker trade. It's been very successful. You heard empowerment earlier. They're a key partner in the LEAD program. That is what is the precursor to the AID Center. Our outreach case coordinators have done phenomenal work. They do a lot of follow-up, so individuals that are in crisis, whether that is a high acuity call with a weapon or violence with a co-responder, or a lower acuity where there's no violence, no weapon, and the STAR van shows up. We get them the help that they need right then and there. But what about tomorrow? What about next week? What about next month? And that's where the outreach case coordinators, they help. A non-police officer, again, so we have a trained professionals in mental health and case management, social workers that then connect with individuals in need, and they have helped people get housing, they've helped them get furniture, they've helped with car repairs, they've gotten young people jobs, things of that nature. So that's a brief overview of many of these equity plans that we have. We're trying to keep people out of the criminal justice system altogether. And the sooner that you do that, right, the studies will show. I'll use drug court for example. That's why LEAD has been so effective, is if you can do that on the front end, if you can connect somebody to the resources at that point of contact, you have greater opportunity for success than booking that person into jail, them getting bonded out, them following up with a court date, and then being put into a program. If you do that on that initial incident or that initial point of contact, that gives you greater opportunity for success. And that's why the mayor, the executive director of public safety, is so committed to the aid assessment intake diversion center. Well documented that we have some crime challenges here in our city. This is what it looks like with regards to violent crime and property crime. Violent crime is year to date up about 2% over our baseline. Property crime is up 54% over our baseline. Also, just as challenging, and as you heard earlier from Andrew, the work has increased. We see a pretty significant increase in calls for service. Community members calling 911 or the non-emergency line in asking for police response on specific issues that they're dealing with. This is more work, and it ties into our budget priorities because of the increase in workload. Response times, many council members are very familiar with response times and the priority response calls, the zeros, the ones, the twos. These are violent crimes in progress. We need to get to those calls as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, with an increased workload and a decrease in staffing, we are seeing an increase in response times. So unfortunately, we worked so hard collaboratively, both with the mayor, the city council, and police department to get these under 12 minutes. Right now, we're at about 13 minutes and 26 seconds on these high priority calls. The lower priority calls, the 3s through 6s, we're at about 31 minutes on these. So we're seeing an increase in these response times, which is why we're asking for restoration of staff. When we're talking about staff, that $8 million ask, this is not new staff. It's not building or putting more on top of our authorized strength. This is just trying to play catch up. And unfortunately, we're going to have to play catch up not only in 2022, but likely in 2023 as well. Services and supplies, primarily this is uniforms, uniform allowance, uniform allotment, capital equipment, and then internal services. Overview, general budget year over year. We've had this come up in a couple of the questions here. For several years, there were 2 deputy chiefs, if you all recall. We had a deputy chief of administration and a deputy chief of operations, and that is how the budget was aligned in those 2 bureaus. Again, admin had a smaller stake of the work. Operations had a huge amount of the work. So we changed that. So there's only 1 deputy chief, 3 division chiefs, 1 for administration, 1 for investigation, 1 for patrol. And that's level sets a little bit of the work assignments here. This is what it looks like as far as breakdown. So at least the change actually happened in 2018. However, it took 1 cycle for that transition to take place, and next year's budget you will not see this out of whack blue line that shows historically only 2 divisions. Again, year over year budget. Here's what it looks like with FTEs. Again, the blue lines represent the alignment of operations and admin. The 3 lines that is in personnel, FTEs there. Patrol is the bulk of the work. Break these down here quickly. Administration, police administration includes property and evidence. This is critical. Maintaining chain of custody on evidence, although it may not seem like the highest priority, I can tell you that it is critical to the operations and success. departments that get themselves in jail or get themselves, I'm sorry, in trouble on these types of issues, or don't pay attention to these types of issues, can have long-term issues with regards to being able to successfully handle cases and adjudication. Training is a big component of this, including training recruits not only here in 2021, but this budget ask in 2022. Identification and records, another critical position that we must maintain in staff. Operations support, again, talked about this, fleet management and uniform team, and then internal affairs. Cases that come up or brought forward by the community have to be thoroughly investigated and monitored, and making sure that that is staffed appropriately. One ask that we have that fits into this particular location, we talked about it with the shared leadership for institutional diversity and equity, is an ABLE program manager, a civilian position. We want to make sure that not only do we train every member of the Denver Police Department in ABLE, that we also are part of a statewide consortium, because what happens in another jurisdiction has a direct impact on our ability to provide effective community policing to our city. There are videos that you all have seen in the metro area that just erode trust between law enforcement and the police department. And we need every agency in the state of Colorado, we need every agency across the country to recognize what we can do to improve. And ABLE is part of the solution. It's not the single solution, but again, if cities embrace and utilize the ABLE program, active bystandership for law enforcement, then we can prevent these horrible tragedies that have become all too common across our country. And it's not good enough just to do your own little jurisdiction or your own city. We need to elevate the entire profession, and we're working to do that with this particular request. Restoration of spots. These are critical spots. I really want to thank the team and their efforts for filling these positions. They were doing acting positions. These positions went unfilled. Our communications manager, many of you recall the great Sonny Jackson, our data manager, Chris Wyckoff, amazing experience with both of them, that part of the budget reductions and the SIP program, we're asking to replace those. Our communications manager has a lot of work. They've been holding it together for the last 19, 20 months. And these positions critically need to be filled, each and every one of them. A transcriptionist at Internal Affairs, our ID record staff is running short. Some of you have asked for or followed up on community requests for copies of reports, so that way people can get insurance claims filed. They've been delayed just because of the volume. We are short staff, and we're asking to restore those locations. Same with the fingerprint technician, the fleet technicians. This is a direct impact on our operations. We have vehicles in desperate need of repair when each and every district is down cars. And when they're down cars, that has an impact on response times. If we have to double up cars because there's not enough cars available, that has an impact on those 911 response times. And same with the fleet tech supervisor. Switching over to investigations, as you all recall, investigations encompasses our major crimes, our special operations, our crime lab, crisis services as well. I think you're quite familiar with these locations or with these areas, and I won't go into too much detail. Specific to the 2022 budget request, forensic science Scientist 1 for CJIC, Crime Gun Intelligence area. This is a previously grant-funded position, and we're asking to move this one position, which is actually two half positions, to the permanent. We have seen increases in gun violence, in shootings, and homicides. 87% of our homicides involve a gun, and being able to process these in a timely manner gives us the greatest opportunity for success on closing these cases, successfully closing these cases. This is just a breakdown. We talked about the first position, victim services. We need to restore several of these positions here, an executive assistance for forensics and evidence, property technicians. We have a data analysis position that really helps us identify where these issues are taking place. That analysis then is operationalized of where our officers focus their efforts. Real-time crime information center, and also a program coordinator that's been left vacant for crisis services, so asking to restore those positions. A small ask here, a high-powered microscope for the lack of being able to break down what an FTIR instrument is. This was purchased way back in 2005. You cannot get replacement parts for it, so we're asking for a one-time replacement, $45,000 on that particular instrument.
Excuse me, Chief, we've had an acronym breakdown, FTIR.
It's a fancy microscope. Patrol, switching over to patrol again. This is kind of the bulk of the team. This is the folks that handle those 911 calls. These are the folks that interact with our community on a daily basis. We talked about the hotspots area. One of the expenditures that we want to make permanent moving forward is the hotspot community patrols. We have had some success in several of the hotspots, and we've had additional challenges in other hotspots. We have had to do this with limited staff, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but being able to get officers in the right areas at the right times is extremely critical. It actually prevents crime, which is key to many of our other issues that we are dealing with here. So we're asking for a permanent $1 million expenditure to this area. Also, this feeds into the staffing challenges that we are facing. We are requesting the ability to pay ASL, accumulated sick leave. By doing it this way, actually paying straight time, it reduces overtime expenditures, and it is the equivalency of getting 15 officers on the street immediately on the first of the year. So instead of having staffing challenges and then utilizing time and a half for backfill, if you pay it out on the ASL payout, you have this more consistent number. There's fewer officers that are out on leave. It equals 15 officers that we are able to put on the street immediately. And then there's a focused approach. This would not be something that would be utilized for some of the senior command staff. This is actually officers, supervisors that are on the street. And this is a quick way to address many of the staffing challenges that we are facing. This slide right here, emergency board up. So if a burglary occurs at a business, they break through a plate glass window, emergency board up is part of that. This is the request moving forward. And then we are also asking for a crime analyst. Look throughout our department, we're actually down about 6 analysts They provide critical information to help us operationalize our patrol, our investigation challenges. When we start talking about staffing, our objective here is to help replenish those vacancies that took place, right? The pandemic itself triggered an economic crisis. All agencies in Denver made cuts to fill that gap. We did, as far as canceling recruit classes. Now we are in a very tough spot with regards to staffing, to meeting those needs, and we are asking to replenish those staffing needs through recruit classes. So we've had 99 uniform separations as of September 15th of 2021. I expect at least 7 more in the next 9 days. We have 8 more that are in the drop program. We would anticipate somewhere around that total 33. Generally, we're right about 75, 80 as far as folks that separate from the department. So we need to make sure that we are replenishing our recruits, and we certainly can talk more about what that looks like, our recruiting efforts to make sure, as Murphy stated, that we are getting the right people to do this very difficult work.
Will you say that total again, and if that includes those latter ones that you mentioned?
So as of September 15th, we have 99 sworn officers who have separated. We have 8 more that are in the drop program. We anticipate about 33 folks that we will lose this year, 33 additional folks this year, 2021. We have 20 recruits that are in the PTO program in the final stages. They actually graduate the program this Saturday, which is great. That will help. We have 41 recruits that are in the academy. They graduate in December, then they need to go through the PTO program about 14 weeks before they can help. So we've got a little bit of help, but there's a big gap, which is indicated here on a slide that I think you all have become familiar with over the years, right? When we're talking about staffing, 1596, that solid line that goes across here, the actual strength, and then the effective strength. So, and I just gave that example, right? There's 41 recruits that are in the academy. They can't handle a single 911 call by themselves. Officers that may be on FMLA for whatever reason, they are taken out of that total number, and that is why, for years, and this is something that you all are fairly familiar with, the goal is always to have that effective strength match the authorized strength to meet the needs of our community, to meet the needs of the people of Denver in addressing these issues. Get that small square there. When we're talking about ARPA funding decisions here, primarily the ARPA funds went to backfill operations, right? With this fewer officers, fewer staff, fewer support staff as well. We need to still handle these demands, and backfill was utilized for that, as well as thank you all for that class of recruits that's set to start October 18th. We are in the hiring process for that. Civil service is really focused. Recruiters are really focused on trying to fill that class. As of last week, we had 27 conditional job offers for these positions, and we'll continue to work very hard to fill that October class to help us with these staffing challenges. But again, you all are very familiar that a class starts, 26 weeks later, it graduates. 14 to 16 weeks later, the individuals finish the PTO program. That's a 9-10 month lag before those officers are able to handle those 911 calls, able to provide that service to our community. And so we need to be very forward thinking when we're looking at staffing challenges with regards to the police services. Yes, can you just advance it? We can go right to questions.
Very fine. Thank you very much, Chief, for your presentation. I'll take a moment and welcome our Mayor Michael B. Hancock to the table, as well as Representative Hines representing Denver's perfect 10. I've got 7 members in the queue: Flynn, Torres, Sawyer, Knight, Herndon, Black, and Ortega. And we'll start off with Councilmember Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, at one point I recall earlier this year, you and I were talking on the phone about some other subject, and you happened to tell me that the dashboard in your office showed that at that moment, there were 44 911 calls stacked up waiting to be responded to. Can you, and I think we probably can because we have a very good data analysis unit, but can you sift that data, not here, in real time, but for us as we move forward, can you sift that data a little more granularly to determine overall where in town are those highest levels occurring? Because that was a citywide figure, not just Police District 4, thank God. Where are the highest levels of stacked calls waiting, and what can we do about it?
So, Councilman, excellent question. We have the dashboard. We look at this regularly, and it feeds in directly with what Andrew and Denver 911 are talking about. You want that real-time data, that real-time information to help you operationalize what those needs are. And when we do see influxes, we work to try to mitigate those at that time. And sometimes there's a big incident. Saturday in District 4, for example, when we had a barricade situation involving an armed domestic violence suspect who refused to come out.
That was right behind my house. Thank you.
That takes a lot of resources, right? We don't go rushing into these situations. We utilize dialogue, we utilize negotiators in order to successfully resolve that type of situation. But you still have to hold the perimeter because you don't want an innocent person stumbling into the scene and becoming, negatively impacted by this. So I can tell you on that day that District 4's calls for service and response times increase because of the staffing challenges. We will then hold over additional shifts in order to meet that goal, and those are part of the staffing challenges. It's directly tied to those response times, those high priority response times. These are up 16% over our 3-year baseline, right? Together, you all in this room, mayor and council, work to address these response times. It was a goal to get them under 12 minutes. We got them under 12 minutes, and we were working towards getting under 10 minutes. When somebody calls 911 because of an emergency, it's critical that police, fire, EMS are able to respond quickly and address those needs. Because of the staffing challenges and the 7.2% increase in citizen-initiated calls for service, we need to work to address this need, and we do that through that equity lens. That is why the safety department worked so hard to get the START program initiated, right? 2.8% of our calls for service, if an alternative response can handle that, if it's a low-level call for service can handle that, that frees up police officers to address these violent calls, these calls involving traffic safety, to free up officers to do what they do best. And we're continuing to do both at the same time, trying to find those long-term solutions. But we analyze this and then we work to mitigate it. The biggest issue or the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is staffing. We're at, as of last week, we're at 1515. That's less officers than we had in 2008. Fewer officers than we had in 2008. The census shows that the city has grown by 30% during that time. So we have to work on all of these approaches so we get the right response to the right type of call.